What's happening, fishing friends? Welcome to another episode. Tonight we're talking about my 3 favorite knots for beginners. Now, this has changed a little bit. I did a video on this, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. Since then I've changed. I honestly, really, most of the time only use 2 knots to tie on my lures. Now, I'm going to go over a third because I do really think these are the easiest knots for beginners to tie, and they're all strong and reliable. I can't stress the importance of tying a good knot. You're going to be tying and untying lures a lot when you first start out, and you can have a $1,000 combo, a bunch of lures, expensive line. If you can't tie a knot, none of that means anything. And there is no excuse for not tying a good knot. You know, it's going to take time to learn lures, techniques, where to find fish, all that. But you can sit in front of your TV and practice a good knot. You're going to be tying and retying when you get in brush and rocks and you know your line gets frayed. Tying on new lures, you're probably going to be switching. If you can't tie a good knot, it's going to lead to heartbreak. When you get a big fish on or you set the hook hard on a fish, that's the times you're going to be breaking off. So I cannot stress the importance enough of being able to tie a good knot. So tonight we're going to go over my 3 favorite, 2 that I use a bunch, and a third that I think is a good dependable knot that's easy for everyone to tie. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Enough talking here. Let's go over there and tie knots. Okay, let's get started with tying some knots. So the first one I'm going to tie for you, this one I actually saw Gerald Swindle tie. Ever since then I've used it. He called it the double Shindo knot. Essentially what it is a lot of you have probably learned the improved clinch knot, right? Where you come through here once, you make a loop just like this. And this is not one that I'm showing you, so I'm going to go fast. But you loop it around, what, 6, 7, 8 times, whatever. You go through here, through the hole once. You've made a little loop there. You come back through it. That's the improved clinch knot. A lot of you probably tied that one. That was the first knot I know that I learned. Cinch that down. You're going to have the one tag end. This stops grabbing me. Like that. You're going to have the one tag end. You cut it off. Now, the only problem with this, the improved clinch knot, is your line is only going through the eye of the hook once. So you can see right there, if we can focus, there we go. Only one line goes through the eye of the hook and is holding it. So I was looking up knots for a stronger knot. I mean, this knot works, but it's not the strongest one out there. That's why I was looking for some stronger knots, and I found this. So Gerald Swindle calls this the double Shindo knot. Essentially what it is just a doubled over clinch knot, not an improved clinch, just a regular clinch knot. Okay, so to tie this knot, I'm just using, this is that 65-pound braid. Shout out to my guy Brian for sending this into the channel. I appreciate it. I'm going to use that because it's easier to see. It's large line and it's green. So, okay, so to start this knot, I'm going to run my line through the eye of the hook, pull out my tag line here, and I'm going to take this line and go right back through. So what this is going to do essentially is give me doubled over line. Get that so you guys can see it instead of my thumbs. Pull that through like that. So you can see here I've got kind of a loop over here. The line is through here twice. As you can see there, 2 pieces of line. And then my tag end here, I'm just going to kind of pull a little bit of this out. Keep my tag line here next to my main line. Okay, what I'm going to do from here, the first thing with this knot is make sure that your lines here that are going through the hook eye are not crossed over. Make sure they're parallel to each other there. You can see them moving. Make sure it's parallel and not crossed over. I'm just going to stick the tip of my finger in there to hold it, and I'm going to run this line around my main line and that other tag end, holding them together. I'm going to run this around, and depending, with really thick line, you don't have to go a bunch of times. Usually I go 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm just going to twist that line around the main line and that tag end 6 times. So you can see here that's still the doubled over loop. I'm going to pinch my fingers here to make sure that stays doubled over and it doesn't twist up. And I'm going to run it through that loop that I created right there. Run that through there and gently give this just a little pull. Now, on all of these knots, even if I'm using braid or a nylon line like monofilament or fluorocarbon, I always make sure I lubricate the knot. So I usually just use my saliva. Use whatever you want, but make sure you lubricate that, because on nylon lines, mono, fluoro, it's extremely important that you lubricate so you don't burn the line. When you pull this down real fast, you burn the line. That's going to make it weak and it's easy to break. So when you cinch these knots up, go slow and make sure they're lubricated. So you can see I'm just holding this here, I'm not pulling it, and I'm using that main line and that tag end up here to start pulling this down. And what you're going to notice is all these knots are going to kind of come down and create a little barrel. As I pull that tight, you can see how everything's one nice line there, one little, looks like a little barrel sitting on top of there. That's exactly what you want to see. If you've got any sort of line sticking out here, creating a loop, a big weird bulge, retie it. Don't take a chance with it, just retie it. As you can see, this only takes a couple seconds to tie. Now I'm going to take this one single tag line that was next to my main line. I'm going to give that a pull just to make sure everything's tight. And I'm going to pull again on the main line and the tag line together. And that's it. That's how simple that knot is. That takes no time at all. So again, to reiterate, go through, come back through so my line's doubled over. I twist it around. The bigger the line, the less twists. Usually I would say I go 6 times, but you can go, 7 or 8 if you've got smaller line, but usually 6 I've found to work. It works for braid. I use it for fluorocarbon. Now the only thing with this is you've got 3 tag ends to cut off, and I don't ever cut them super tight or close. I mean, I don't cut them so they're like super, super close, like right in here. I leave a little bit of extra just in case it were to slip. That's the knot you end up with. Easy to tie and super duper strong. I like that for jigs, Texas rigs, anything like that where I'm setting the hook hard. Now, the only problem with this is when you use like a monofilament or a fluorocarbon is these tag ends. So let me give you one example here. I'll get it tied with some monofilament. Okay, so here we have that exact same knot tied with some monofilament. This is just some 17-pound monofilament, a little bit thicker line. You can see here the only downside to this knot is you've got some little things that stick up and some little tag ends that stick out. So the problem with this, when you bring it through, algae or vegetation, anything like that, these tend to grab stuff. So every few times it seems like you're picking stuff off here. So this is a perfect segue to the second knot, which is the trilene knot. Okay, so to start the trilene knot, I'm going to take my line and run it through the eye of the hook, right, like so. I'm going to take that and pull it out. I'm going to put my finger in here and I'm going to create a loop and I'm going to go right back through the same way. So unlike last time where I went through the way I just came in, I'm going to go back around and go in the same direction again. Bringing it through there like so. Again, making sure these are not crossed over each other when I pull this up. Kind of hard to see here. Make sure I'm focusing, but I want my lines to be next to each other. I don't want them crossed underneath the hook like that. So you can see what I've done is I've just created a loop here. That's all I've done. Created a loop. And I'm going to do my 7 rounds again. So I'm going to take this tag in. I'm going to keep my finger in there where that loop is. Take my tag in and go around my main line 7 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's 7. I don't know. Close enough for demonstration purposes. And what I'm going to do, you can see there how I've made that 2 loops. I'm going to take my tag end, bring that through those 2 loops that I've created. Make sure I'm going through both of them, not just one, through both of those right there. Again, at this point, I would lubricate my line, especially with nylon lines like this, monofilament, fluorocarbon. Extremely important that you do that. Now, you'll notice that my tag end on this kind of hangs down toward the back of the hook. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to let that tag end hang down and back, pointed away from the eye of the hook. I'm just going to hold that tag end. I'm not going to pull it. I'm just going to hold it in place, just like so, and pull my main line. So I'm going to hold that tag end, pull my main line, and again, what you'll see is that starts to collapse down. I notice all those are going to land each other nice and neat, just like so. Give it a good tight pull to make sure it's strong. And that's it. You can see that knot right there. There you go, just like that right there. You can see that knot is nice and neat. Not a bunch of weird bulges. Looks like just a regular barrel sitting on top there. I know it is just a bit harder to see there, but inside the eye of that swim jig, those lines are laying parallel to each other. So that loop that I made in there, I want to make sure they're not crossed. Now, you can see what happens with this tag end is it lays toward the back of the bait, which is awesome for grass and vegetation. When I cut this, I don't cut it nice and close. I leave just a little bit, just like so. And look at that. That tag end sticks towards the back of the hook. So when I'm going through vegetation around anything, that tag end is pointed backwards. There's nothing here for that grass and vegetation to grab onto. So there it is, the trilene knot. Nice and neat around grass. You can see there that tag end sticks back. Nothing for it to grab here. It's a good strong knot. I like it on my monofilament fluorocarbon. It's a great little tool, especially in that vegetation. Now the third knot I'm going to show you is a favorite among a lot of people. It's another knot that's really easy to tie. All it really requires is one overhand knot. Everybody knows how to do that. If you know how to tie your shoes, you know how to tie an overhand knot. So the third one I'm going to show you works well for monofilament fluorocarbon, especially for braid. I know a lot of people swear by it for braid. Knot number 3 is going to be the Palomar knot. Okay, so the third knot is the Palomar knot. We're going to tie this on a frog, again, using that 65-pound braid. Like I said, a lot of people really swear for this knot when they're using braid, but it works for anything, fluorocarbon, monofilament as well. I know a lot of people, this is really the only knot they use. So to start this knot, we're going to start the same way we did for the first one. We're going to go through the eye of the bait, bring that through to get some extra line, and then pass that through the same way that I just came. So I went through and I came back through. Now, and super important with this one, again, make sure your line's not crossed over. So you can see here when you look at the eye of that bait, see how my tag end is on top? Those lines are not crossed over. You don't want to get these lines all twisted up inside of the eye of the hook. That's where you're going to have break-off problems. So make sure that those are separated, and then when you go to start moving this knot, make sure those lines are laying parallel on the eye of the hook, just like that, laying over each other, not crossed around. Okay, so this loop that I made, this double over end, all I'm going to do is tie a simple overhand knot, but it's important that you do not cinch this knot down. So I'm going to bring that around, bring that in through here, just a regular overhand knot, just like you would start when you're tying your shoes, just like that. Don't pull that knot down tight yet though. Okay, the next step is going to be this end here where you've got this loop, this doubled over end. I'm going to take my lure and pass it through there. So I'm just going to bring my lure through that loop that I made. Now, when I start to cinch this down, you'd want to make sure you lubricate your knot really well here. A lot of people just kind of hold this knot and let this go through their mouth as they're lubricating with saliva, but I'm going to make sure all this is lubricated, and this rounded over end, I want to make sure that sits on top of the knot that I made here. So I'm going to take my tag end and my regular main line. I'm going to start to pull these through. You can see what's going to happen is it's going to start to pull this loop down, and it's going to tighten down on itself. So really important right here. What I was meaning is I want to make sure that this stays up on top of this little knot here. I don't want this to get down wrapped around the eye of it. I don't want it to be down here when I'm tightening it up. I don't want it to be next to it. I want it to be up above that overhand knot. So when I start to cinch this down, it's sitting right on top of it like that. It's pushing down on that overhand knot, keeping it held into place, just like so. Now again, I always take the tag in, the single line here that I'm going to cut off. I take that and give that a good pull to make sure everything's tight. I take my regular main line, give it a good pull to make sure everything's tight. And that is it. That's what you get with the Palomar knot. It's essentially just an overhand knot, and then this loop slides down the main line and sits right on there and keeps it cinched down. Now, when I'm using the Palomar knot with braid, I do not ever cut my tag in super short. On this one, there's only one tag in that you have to cut. I always leave a little bit extra, just like that. I know some people that are OCD, that drives them nuts, but if they didn't see the 160 feet of line in front of the lure, I don't think that little 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch of tag there is going to bother them. So there you have it. Those are my 3 favorite knots. The doubled over clinch knot, the trilene knot, and this, the old Palomar knot. All right, fishing friends, that's going to do it for tonight. I hope this video helped. Comment below and let me know, do you use one of those knots, or is there a different knot that you use? Now, again, I say these are my 3 favorite knots. There's other knots out there. You have to find what works for you. I always get skeptical when somebody says, this is the 3 best, or you must know this. Fishing is an individual deal. You got to find what works for you. But I honestly do believe these are 3 of the best knots out there, and I gave you my reasonings why. So tonight's subscribe fishing friend shout out goes to Braden T. Braden, thank you for watching and commenting. Thank you everybody else out there for watching. My channel's doing far more than I ever thought it could. So huge thanks to all of you. And if any of you are at home tying your knots and practicing, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those below. I'm a little bit behind on comments, but I promise I'll get caught back up, and I will give you any sort of tips and pointers that I can think of. So thank you all very much for watching. Stay safe out there, and until next time.